Are you sure you know how to use one of those flamethrowers, Celsius Holdings? Because it's definitely getting hot in here.
It's getting hot in here, so hot, so take off all your clothes.
No, Nelly, not that kind of hot in here. Well, not to spoil all the fun of the video, but the third quarter results for Celsius Holdings broke a ton of their internal records. Similar to previous quarterly breakdown videos that I did on Celsius Holdings, I'm going to be using their quarterly earnings report and conference call to talk about some broader energy beverage trends in the market and just some overall strategic insights. But let's kind of dive into some of the high level financial performance. The 2020 quarter 3 revenue for Celsius Holdings was $36.8 million, which is up 80% year over year and also up 22.7% on a quarter over quarter basis. Now, that 80% year over year growth is a little bit beefy, and it's because there's some growth associated to an acquisition that happened in October of 2019 when Celsius Holdings actually bought their Nordic distributor, Funk Food Group. But let's kind of strip that away a little bit and talk about just region by region. So just on the North American region, sales were $26.9 million, which is up 60% year over year. If we look at Europe, which this is where a lot of that Funk Food Group kind of growth gets put in there, the European revenue was $6.5 million, which was a growth rate of 182% year over year. Now, if we look at China and some of the other international markets, their revenue was just around $420,000. An impressive note to mention around gross profit margin, it was 47.6% this quarter, which was up 540 basis points. So a huge gain for Celsius Holdings in this area. Diving into a little bit of the retail and distribution updates, they're now up to 79,000 retail locations in North America. That's up 5,000 on a quarter over quarter basis. If you look at DSD distributors, Celsius added 12 more. They're up to 147 total. And they've been able to transition most of Target and also some of CVS, 7-Eleven, and Walmart to their DSD system. I think they've also added Speedway to their DSD system, and around 75% of the metropolitan markets are now covered by one of their DSD distributors. DSD distributors are extremely important for beverage, and it's mostly around the old adage that faces sell cases, and when it's cold, it's sold. So you really got to have that kind of interaction. And if you're looking at just like the energy beverage category as a whole, one of the reasons why Red Bull, as the largest brand in that space, has done extremely well comparable to its competitors during the pandemic is that they have continuously been out in the field. They did not shut down their field team to the level as some of these other brands that are associated with big systems like Keurig Dr. Pepper, PepsiCo, and Coca-Cola Company. Just want to throw in some SPINS data from 52 weeks ending on October 4th. You had about a 44% growth in the convenience channel for Celsius Holdings, which is about 15 times more than the industry rate. They're now up to a 16% ACV in that channel. If you look at more of like an all-channel MULO growth rate, Celsius Holdings is at 100% growth and an ACV of around 36.5%. And this is outpacing the category by about 7 or 8 times. But despite all of the success in some of those larger channels, some of the existing channels that Celsius Holdings has operated in for a long time and done very well, so some of the more like alt channels in terms of like specialty or health clubs or vending, those have all continued to struggle because of some of the issues with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if we shift from physical over to digital, Celsius Holdings actually does extremely well on the digital channels, and they've had 100% growth on their e-commerce channels year over year, driven by Amazon, which makes up about 22% of their North American revenue. If we look at some of the stack line data coming from Amazon, for the 4 weeks ending October 17th of 2020, Celsius Holdings actually had Amazon growth of 190%, which allows them to continue to be the third largest selling energy drink brand on the Amazon platform, behind Monster and Red Bull. It's extremely important for Celsius to continue to try to win the digital channel, because that is the new age of retail's land grab, or real estate that you really need to own. Just because of existing established brands owning some of the physical retail channels doesn't always translate. And Celsius obviously is not the third biggest energy drink brand across the whole market. So for them to be the third largest brand on Amazon is extremely important. But because we're talking about beverage and that's associated with grocery e-commerce, it's important for any brand in that space to really be focusing past Amazon as well and into some of these retailers, omni-channel initiatives, and looking at individual opportunities to get their brand in front of a lot more customers through some of these intermediaries, third-party ones, through things like Instacart, Shipt, or even through the convenience channel you have like GoPuff and DoorDash. Now, Celsius Holdings, I was actually surprised that they mentioned this because it hasn't really gotten as much publicity. It's becoming an extremely big problem, but there is a huge aluminum can shortage that's happening in the North American market that all brands are going to be having to deal with, not necessarily just Celsius Holdings. So you're seeing some of the very large beverage brands like Coca-Cola Company or PepsiCo, or even on the alcoholic side with Molson Coors and AB InBev, really looking at SKU rationalization and trimming down their portfolio. Now, they needed to do those things anyways. That's just something that you should be consistently looking at. But this aluminum can shortage is a reason for them to really get aggressive with that and cut some of the low performing ones, because they want to utilize that aluminum can supply for some of their faster growing or keystone brands. And on the lowest kind of brands within the space that uses aluminum cans, you're seeing a lot of contract manufacturers turn away business if they don't believe in that product. So this should really, like in the short term, wash away a lot of the competitive concerns for upstart brands, because they're not going to be able to get aluminum cans for their production, or at least enough to keep supply or supplying some of their growth. Now, Celsius Holdings is noting that they're going to have their base needs of cans, but for their internal projections on growth, which are pretty high next year, they're saying they're going to struggle to find extra aluminum in the North American market. So luckily, because Celsius does have, I think, a joint venture or a very strong partnership in China, and then also owning now their supplier in Europe with Funk Food Group, they're able to get aluminum cans sent over back to the North American market. But that is going to create some pressure on their gross margins, but it should not interrupt the overall performance of Celsius. They're probably just going to need to make some extra precautions to make sure that they're keeping their number one sellers in stock always, especially because they're gaining a lot of distribution points. And that's the last thing anybody that is new on shelf wants to do in the eyes of their retailers. Now, to hedge some of this potential issues that I just mentioned with the aluminum can shortage, Celsius Holdings is following a little bit of what some other beverage leaders are doing as well, and deepening their ready-to-mix, on-the-go powdered product lines. So you're also seeing this with Life Aid Beverage Company that just kind of launched theirs, and some of the other existing kind of performance energy drinks did stem from a powdered ready-to-mix kind of heritage. So they're going to be probably leaning a little bit further in that direction as well, just to kind of offset some things happening with the aluminum can shortage. And because the ready-to-mix powders are usually pretty high margin, it does help from a profitability standpoint as well. And it's important to note, while the ready-to-mix powdered on-the-go products from Celsius are not a meaningful part of their business currently, they do have some pretty hefty distribution of that product. They are in Walmart, they're in H-E-B, they're in Harris Teeter, Publix, and the Vitamin Shop. And within the powdered, kind of on the go energy products as a whole, that has been growing as an overall category. So there could be some incremental business that is gained, and it could become something material for a business like Celsius Holdings. Now, outside of just like the ready to mix side of things, back on like the ready to drink beverage category, the leadership team at Celsius did mention that they were aggressively seeking some new product development, also some new line extensions and flavor development, and they're still thinking about bringing over some of the fast products that are part of the Funk Food Group sometime in 2021. But obviously there needs to be a little bit of like a clearance of uncertainty from the COVID-19 pandemic, because ready to eat functional foods, especially in a bar form, there's a lot of things to attach to mobility still, and it wouldn't be the best time for them to launch. And before I end this video, I want to talk a little bit about capitalization for Celsius Holdings. This has been a very interesting journey since the beginning and the founding of Celsius Holdings, but because of the strong stock performance associated with their strong operating performance, Celsius Holdings has taken advantage of that and did a new private offering that raised $22 million for the company. What that did was they were able to pay off the $10 million associated with the transaction that they had with acquiring the Funk Food Group. So now Celsius Holdings has a debt-free balance sheet. Now, rolling this into my final thoughts, Celsius Holdings continues to perform extremely well, even though some of their historically great sales channels have performed poorly. That being said, the company is doing a really good job at transforming itself away from just being that niche market player and into a very viable mainstream energy beverage brand. I think you're going to continuously get some more trialing as they gain retail distribution points in this fickle beverage category. So as some of that ACV increases over time, I think you're going to get some of that trialing. Hopefully Celsius can keep them within their system. There's not huge churn because they obviously do not have the marketing budgets that larger players in the energy drink space have. I still believe in the next 12 to 18 months, Celsius Holdings will be acquired, but with some of the aggressive like stock price moves over 2020, the stock has gotten extremely expensive, and I believe there's a market cap of over $2 or $2.5 billion now. So anybody that's making a deal for Celsius has to really believe in the brand's longevity. Now, if anybody has any questions about Celsius Holdings or this particular earnings report, please leave a comment below or reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly, and if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.